I am Sophie Bennett, 26 years old, and on what should have been the happiest day of my life, my parents abandoned me. They flew to Maui while I prepared to walk down the aisle, leaving behind a box containing my wedding dress, burned to ashes with a note that read, "Let's see how you get married." Little did they know who my in-laws truly were, or the wedding I would still have, despite their cruelty. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from. Please like and subscribe if you've ever had to stand up against family who tried to dim your light. Growing up in a middle-class home in suburban Denver, Colorado, I always felt like I was walking on eggshells. My parents, Margaret and Thomas Bennett, were rigid perfectionists who micromanaged every aspect of my existence. From the clothes I wore to the friends I made, nothing escaped their scrutiny and rarely met their standards. Our modest three-bedroom house was always immaculately clean, as appearances mattered above all else to my parents. My father worked as a bank manager, and my mother was an administrative assistant at a local insurance company. They weren't wealthy by any measure, but they desperately wanted to appear more successful than they were. This obsession with status, despite our financial limitations, created a tense household atmosphere. My younger sister Emily, for years my junior, somehow managed to become the golden child who could do no wrong. While I received criticism for bringing home an A-, Emily would be praised for a B. The disparity in treatment was glaring, but questioning it only made things worse. "Why can't you be grateful for what we've given you?" my mother would ask whenever I expressed any disappointment or disagreement. "We've sacrificed everything for you girls." Those sacrifices were mentioned daily, wielded like weapons whenever I showed any sign of independence. My accomplishments were never celebrated without reminders of how much my parents had given up for my success. When I was accepted to the University of Colorado Boulder with a partial scholarship, instead of congratulations, my father remarked, "Well, if it had been a full ride, we wouldn't have to struggle to pay the difference." I majored in marketing, a practical choice that my parents reluctantly approved after I abandoned my dream of studying art history to please them. Even then, they questioned if I was smart enough to succeed in business. Their doubt became a voice in my head that I carried through college, undermining my confidence even as I excelled academically. After graduation, I secured a position at a respected digital marketing firm in Denver. The entry-level salary was modest but offered growth potential. My parents were quick to compare it unfavorably to my cousin Daniel, who had gone into investment banking. "He's already making six figures," my mother would comment during our Sunday phone calls. Dating was another battlefield. Every boyfriend was subjected to impossible standards and subtle humiliation during family dinners. My college boyfriend, Ethan, was dismissed as lacking ambition because he wanted to become a teacher. Ryan, whom I dated for 2 years after college, was too focused on his career to be a good husband, despite my parents previously criticizing Ethan for the opposite reason. I could never win by my mid-20s. I had learned to share less about my personal life. I began seeing a therapist, Dr. Laura Kim, who helped me recognize the patterns of emotional manipulation in my family dynamics. "What you're describing sounds like conditional love," she told me during one session. "Your worth to them seems tied to how well you fulfill their expectations, not who you actually are." This revelation was both painful and liberating. I started building boundaries, moving to an apartment further from my parents in Aurora, Colorado, and limiting our interactions to twice-monthly dinners. I cultivated friendships with supportive people like my college roommate, Claire, and my coworker Nathan, who appreciated me for who I was, not what I achieved. Still, years of conditioning made it difficult to completely break free from seeking my parents' approval. Every achievement was still mentally measured against their potential reaction. Every setback came with the anticipated disappointment in their eyes. I was 26 years old, but still fighting to discover who I was outside of their expectations. Little did I know that meeting David would be the catalyst that would finally force me to choose between the family I was born into and the life I deserved. I met David Larson at a fundraising gala for Denver Children's Hospital in the spring of 2 years ago. My company had donated marketing services to the event, and I was there representing our team. Romance was the last thing on my mind that evening as I worked with potential clients, glass of champagne in hand. "You look as bored as I feel," a voice said beside me as I studied the silent auction items to avoid another conversation about quarterly marketing budgets. I turned to find a tall man with kind green eyes and an easy smile that made me instinctively smile back. "Is it that obvious?" I asked, laughing. "Only to another person hiding by the least popular auction table," he replied, gesturing to the handmade pottery we were pretending to examine. "I'm David, by the way." "Sophie," I said, shaking his offered hand. We spent the rest of the evening talking about everything except business. David was refreshingly genuine in a room full of people trying to impress each other. He listened attentively when I spoke, asked thoughtful questions, and made me laugh more than I had in months. When he asked for my number at the end of the night, giving it to him felt like the most natural thing in the world. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant in Capitol Hill. David arrived in a modest sedan, wearing jeans and a button-down shirt. Nothing about him suggested wealth or pretension. He told me he worked for his family business, but didn't elaborate, and I didn't press. After years of my parents judging people by their status, I found his humility attractive. Over the next several months, our relationship deepened. David was patient and supportive, never pushing when I was reluctant to discuss my family. When I finally shared some of my childhood experiences, his response was validating rather than pitying. "They missed out on knowing the amazing woman you are," he said, holding my hand across the table. "That's their loss." 6 months into our relationship, I still hadn't introduced David to my parents. The thought of subjecting him to their judgment terrified me. He never pressured me, understanding my hesitation without making me feel guilty about it. It was during a weekend trip to Aspen that I learned more about David's background. We were walking along a mountain trail when he casually mentioned that his family owned Larson & Sons, a name I vaguely recognized as an upscale jewelry company. "Wait," I said, stopping in my tracks. "Larson & Sons, the goldsmiths, the ones with stores in New York, Denver, and Seattle." David looked slightly uncomfortable. "Yes, that's them. My great-grandfather started the company in 1920. My father runs it now, and I work in design and sourcing." "I don't usually lead with that information." "Why not?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Because people treat you differently when they think you have money," he said simply. "They either want something from you or assume you're spoiled and entitled. I'd rather be known for who I am than what my family owns." His honesty touched me deeply. Here was someone who could have used his family name to impress, but instead chose to live modestly and be judged on his own merits. It made me love him even more. Eventually, I could no longer avoid introducing David to my parents. We had been dating for almost a year, and he had invited me to meet his family, who were warm and welcoming. I reluctantly arranged a dinner at my parents' house in Denver, preparing David as best I could for their likely behavior. The evening was as uncomfortable as I had feared. My parents were coldly polite, interrogating David about his job and future plans with thinly veiled skepticism. When he mentioned working for his family's jewelry business, my father assumed he was a store clerk and made a dismissive remark about retail jobs. David didn't correct him, simply saying he enjoyed the craftsmanship aspect of the industry. On the drive home, I apologized repeatedly. "I'm so sorry about my parents. They were horrible." David reached over and squeezed my hand. "Sophie, you have nothing to apologize for. You're not responsible for their behavior. Besides, their opinion of me doesn't change how I feel about you." 18 months into our relationship, during a private dinner at a rooftop restaurant in downtown Denver, David got down on one knee and proposed with a stunning ring he had designed himself. It featured an emerald-cut diamond in a platinum setting with tiny sapphires, my birthstone, embedded in the band. "Sophie, you've shown me what it means to be brave and true to yourself despite every obstacle. I want to spend my life supporting your dreams the way you've supported mine. Will you marry me?" Through happy tears, I said yes without hesitation. The moment was perfect, made even more special by the thought and care he had put into creating a ring that reflected my personality. When I called my parents the next day to share the news, their response was lukewarm at best. "Well, I suppose congratulations are in order," my mother said without enthusiasm. "Though you've only known him for a year and a half, that seems rather rushed." My father was more direct. "I hope he has better career prospects than retail if he plans to support a family. Have you discussed finances? Prenuptial agreements?" Their reaction hurt but didn't surprise me. I had learned to expect disappointment, but this time I refused to let them diminish my happiness. David and I were building something beautiful together, with or without their blessing. The months following our engagement should have been filled with joy, but instead became an exercise in managing family drama. David and I envisioned an elegant but intimate wedding with about 100 guests at the Denver Botanic Gardens. We wanted something meaningful that reflected our personalities rather than an extravagant display. When David's parents, Elizabeth and Michael Larson, offered to pay for the wedding as a gift, I was touched by their generosity. "Your family now," Elizabeth told me warmly. "Let us do this for you both." My parents, however, saw their offer as an affront. "We can contribute to our own daughter's wedding," my father insisted during an uncomfortable dinner. Despite their more limited financial means, pride was getting in the way of practicality. Dad, the Larsons want to do this for us, not because they think you can't afford it, I explained, trying to smooth things over. So now you're embarrassed by us, my mother interjected, ashamed of where you come from. No matter how carefully I navigated these conversations, my parents found ways to feel slighted. When we selected the venue, they complained it was unnecessarily fancy. When we chose the menu, they questioned why we needed such exotic food when a normal dinner would suffice. Every decision became a battleground. I tried including my mother in dress shopping, hoping it might be a bonding experience. We visited an upscale bridal boutique in Denver where I fell in love with a classic Align gown with delicate beadwork. $10,000 for a dress you'll wear once. My mother exclaimed loudly enough for other shoppers to hear. That's obscene, Sophie. I raised you better than this. The dress was actually being offered at a discount as a previous season's design, and Elizabeth had privately told me not to worry about the cost. Still, my mother's reaction left me in tears in the boutique fitting room. Maybe we should go somewhere more affordable, I suggested, trying to salvage the day. What's the point? She replied. You clearly prefer Elizabeth's opinion to mine anyway. By contrast, shopping with Elizabeth the following weekend was a joyful experience. She was supportive without being pushy, honest without being cruel. When I finally said yes to the dress I loved, she hugged me and said, "You look absolutely beautiful, Sophie. David won't be able to take his eyes off you." As the wedding date approached, the contrast between my parents and the Larsons became increasingly stark. My future in-laws included us in family dinners, asked about our preferences, and respected our decisions. They were wealthy but unpretentious, successful but humble. The tension culminated at the rehearsal dinner, hosted by the Larsons at an upscale restaurant overlooking the Denver skyline. They had arranged a private room with personalized menus and thoughtful touches like framed photos of David and me throughout our relationship. During his toast, David's father spoke warmly about welcoming me to their family and the joy of seeing his son so happy. When it was my father's turn to speak, he delivered a speech laced with backhanded compliments. "Sophie has always been a girl with big dreams," he said, glass in hand. "Sometimes too big for her own good, but I guess this time her ambitions have paid off." He looked pointedly at David. "She certainly landed on her feet." The implication that I had pursued David for his family's money hung in the air. I felt my face burn with humiliation as an uncomfortable silence followed. David squeezed my hand under the table, his quiet support the only thing keeping me from falling apart. Later that night, I confronted my parents in their hotel room. "How could you say that? Do you really think I'm with David for his money? I didn't even know about his family business when we met. We're just concerned about you." My mother replied defensively. "You've always been impulsive. We don't want you getting swept away by all this." She gestured vaguely, presumably referring to the Larsons' wealth. "I'm 26 years old, not a child. I'm marrying David because I love him. He respects me and supports me, which is more than I can say for you two lately." "Watch your tone," my father warned. "We're still your parents." "Then act like it," I responded, my voice breaking. "Tomorrow is supposed to be the happiest day of my life. All I want is for you to be happy for me. Is that really too much to ask?" They didn't answer directly, but my mother hugged me stiffly before I left. "Get some sleep," she said. "Everything will look better in the morning." I returned to my hotel room, emotionally exhausted but hopeful that perhaps we had cleared the air. Maybe tomorrow would be different. Maybe they would finally put aside their resentments and simply be present for one of the most important days of my life. I had no idea that by morning they would be on their way to Maui, leaving destruction in their wake. I woke up early on my wedding day, a mixture of excitement and nervous energy making sleep impossible. The suite I had booked at the Brown Palace Hotel overlooked downtown Denver, and the June sunrise cast a golden glow across the city that seemed like a good omen. Today, I would marry the man I loved, surrounded by friends and family. Despite the tensions with my parents, I was determined to focus on the joy of the occasion. My phone rang just as I was pouring my first cup of coffee. Seeing my sister's name on the screen, I answered cheerfully, "Good morning. Are you on your way over? The hairstylist will be here in an hour." There was a pause before Emily spoke, her voice unusually hesitant. "Sophie, I don't know how to tell you this, but Mom and Dad are gone." "What do you mean, gone?" I asked, not comprehending. "Their hotel is just down the street. Are they getting breakfast or something?" "No, Sophie, they left. They flew to Maui this morning. Dad had apparently booked the trip weeks ago. They asked me to tell you they won't be at the wedding." The coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. That's not possible. My wedding is today. Today. Why would they do this? Emily's voice was small. Mom said you made your choice by siding with his family over ours. Dad said you needed to learn a lesson about loyalty. She paused. There's something else. They left a package at your apartment. The building manager called me because they couldn't reach you. He said Dad was insistent that you get it this morning. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My parents had abandoned me on my wedding day, not because of an emergency or illness, but deliberately to punish me for imagined disloyalty. I struggled to breathe as the reality sank in. By the time my bridesmaids arrived, I was sitting on the bathroom floor in tears. My best friend Claire took charge, sending someone to my apartment to retrieve the mysterious package, while the others tried to comfort me. They've always been difficult, I sobbed, but I never thought they'd do something like this. How could they just leave? What am I going to tell everyone? Who will walk me down the aisle? Elizabeth arrived shortly after, immediately enveloping me in a maternal hug that made me cry harder. Oh, Sophie, I'm so sorry, she said, holding me tight. But listen to me. David loves you. We love you. And this wedding is going to happen with or without your parents. The package from my apartment arrived as the makeup artist was trying to salvage my tear-swollen eyes. It was a large box wrapped in plain brown paper with my name written in my father's handwriting. Do you want me to open it? Claire offered, clearly concerned about what might be inside. No, I need to see it, I insisted, though dread filled my stomach. Nothing could have prepared me for what the box contained. Inside was my wedding dress, the one I had purchased with Elizabeth, now reduced to a partially burned ruin. The delicate beadwork was melted, the silk charred around the edges. Pinned to what remained of the bodice was a handwritten note. Let's see how you get married now. Maybe next time you'll remember where your loyalties should lie. A collective gasp filled the room. Elizabeth's hand flew to her mouth in horror. Claire swore under her breath. The makeup artist froze, brush in midair. They burned my wedding dress, I whispered, shocked, giving way to a bone-deep pain. They actually destroyed my dress to stop me from getting married. The cruelty of the act was breathtaking. This wasn't just disapproval or absence. This was an active attempt to sabotage one of the most important days of my life. Something inside me shifted in that moment, a fundamental realignment of how I saw my parents and my relationship with them. As if sensing my thoughts, Elizabeth knelt beside me. Sophie, listen to me. This is horrible and inexcusable, but it won't stop today from happening. I have an idea. She made a quick call to her friend Rachel, who owned a high-end boutique in downtown Denver. Within an hour, a selection of designer wedding gowns in my size was delivered to the hotel suite. Among them was a stunning Vera Wang creation that fit as if it had been made for me, requiring only minor alterations that the boutique seamstress performed on-site. While I was being fitted, David called, having heard about my parents from his best man, who had spoken to Claire. Sophie, I'm so sorry, he said, his voice tight with anger on my behalf. Whatever you want to do today, I support you. If you want to postpone, we can. If you want to elope instead, I'm ready. This is your call. His understanding brought fresh tears to my eyes, but also strengthened my resolve. I want to marry you today, I told him. I'm not letting them ruin this for us. They've taken enough. By early afternoon, a transformation had occurred. The new dress fit perfectly. My makeup had been reapplied to cover all traces of tears. My bridesmaids surrounded me with love and encouragement. But as we prepared to leave for the Botanic Gardens, a new worry surfaced. Who will walk me down the aisle? I asked, the question catching in my throat. It was Elizabeth who provided the answer. Michael would be honored if you'd allow him, but only if that feels right to you, Sophie. The gesture moved me deeply. David's father had shown me more respect and kindness in 2 years than my own had in 26. I'd be grateful, I replied. As we arrived at the venue, the wedding coordinator approached with concern. I've been trying to reach your parents. They were supposed to be part of the processional. There's been a change of plans, I said simply. Not willing to explain the painful truth to everyone, Michael Larson will be walking me down the aisle. Despite the morning's trauma. As the music began and I stood at the entrance to the garden with Michael at my side, a surprising calm settled over me. The path ahead was lined with flowers and smiling faces. At the end stood David, his eyes filled with love as he watched me approach. Ready? Michael asked gently. I took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, I'm ready. Despite the morning's heartbreak, my wedding was everything I could have hoped for. The Denver Botanic Gardens was in full summer bloom, creating a natural cathedral of flowers and greenery. As the string quartet played Pachelbel's canon, I walked down the aisle on Michael's arm, my eyes fixed on David, waiting for me beneath an arch of white roses and ivy. The absence of my parents created a hollow space in my heart. But it was quickly filled by the genuine warmth from everyone present. Friends and family from both sides stood as I passed, their faces reflecting happiness for us rather than pity for my situation. I had chosen not to share the full truth of my parents' actions with most guests, simply saying there had been a family emergency. When Michael placed my hand in David's, he added an unscripted moment, kissing my cheek and whispering, "We're so proud to have you join our family." The simple sincerity of his words healed something broken inside me. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful. We had written our own vows, and David's voice was steady as he promised to stand by me through all of life's challenges. "You've shown me what true strength looks like," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. "I promise to be your partner, your champion, and your safe harbor today and always." When it was my turn, my voice wavered only slightly. "David, you've taught me that love shouldn't have conditions or expectations attached. You accept me completely as I am. I promise to cherish that gift and return it to you every day of our lives together." As we exchanged rings and were pronounced husband and wife, a sense of peace washed over me. This moment was ours, and nothing could diminish it, not even my parents' cruel attempt to derail our day. The reception was held in the garden's glass-enclosed pavilion, transformed with twinkling lights and centerpieces of garden roses and wildflowers. During the cocktail hour, countless guests approached to congratulate us, unaware of the morning's drama or my change of dress. "You look absolutely stunning," my former college roommate, Claire, said as she hugged me. "That dress is even more beautiful than the one you showed me before." I smiled, not correcting her assumption. "Thank you. It feels perfect for today." The traditional father-daughter dance was reimagined as a special dance with Michael, who had requested the band play Frank Sinatra's "The Way You Look Tonight." As we moved across the floor, he spoke quietly. "Elizabeth and I want you to know that we consider you our daughter now, Sophie, not just legally, but in our hearts." Later, during the toasts, Elizabeth stood and raised her glass. When David brought Sophie home to meet us, we knew immediately that he had found his perfect match. Her kindness, intelligence, and strength of character shone through from the first moment. "Today, we don't just gain a daughter-in-law, we gain a daughter." Her words brought fresh tears to my eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude rather than pain. The celebration continued late into the night with dancing, laughter, and genuine joy. If anyone noticed my parents' absence, they were tactful enough not to mention it. By the end of the evening, surrounded by people who truly cared for us, I realized that family could be chosen as well as born. 2 days later, David and I departed for our honeymoon, a 3-week journey through Italy that his parents had arranged as a wedding gift. As we explored the ancient streets of Rome, the canals of Venice, and the rolling hills of Tuscany, the pain of my parents' betrayal began to recede. Though it never disappeared completely, it was during a quiet evening at our hotel in Florence that I decided to post a selection of wedding photos on social media. Until then, I had been hesitant, not wanting to deal with questions about my parents' absence, but looking at the joyful images of our perfect day, I felt a surge of defiance. Why should I hide my happiness to protect those who had tried to destroy it? One selected a dozen photos that captured the beauty and emotion of the day, including several with David's family. One particular image showed us with Elizabeth and Michael, all dressed in our finery. The Larson family's multi-generational goldsmith heritage, subtly evident in the exquisite jewelry. Elizabeth wore pieces I now knew were company heirlooms worth millions. Within hours, the post received hundreds of likes and comments from friends and acquaintances expressing their congratulations. But it was a comment from the designer of my replacement dress that caused the post to gain unexpected attention. "Absolutely honored that my design was chosen for your special day," Rachel wrote, tagging her boutique's account. "Sophie makes a breathtaking bride in our couture collection." The high-profile tag led to the post being shared in fashion circles, bringing it to a much wider audience than I had anticipated. The combination of the beautiful setting, the designer dress, and the presence of the Larson family, known in certain circles for their exclusive jewelry empire, created a perfect storm of social media interest. As David and I traveled through Tuscany, largely disconnected from our phones, we remained unaware that our wedding had become something of a talking point. It was only when we arrived in Rome for the final leg of our journey that I checked my messages and discovered dozens of notifications, including several missed calls from a number I recognized all too well. My parents had seen the wedding photos, and they were not happy. Our return flight from Rome landed in Denver on a sweltering July afternoon. As soon as I turned my phone off airplane mode, it began buzzing continuously with notifications. 99 missed calls, 68 text messages, dozens of voicemails. The majority were from my parents. This can't be good, I murmured to David as we waited for our luggage. He squeezed my hand. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together. Do you want to listen to any of the messages now? I shook my head. Not here. Let's get home first. Our apartment felt blissfully peaceful after the long journey. We unpacked the essentials and ordered takeout before. I finally worked up the courage to check the first voicemail from my mother. Her voice was tight with barely controlled fury. Sophie, call us back immediately. We need to discuss these photos you've posted. How dare you humiliate us this way? Call us back. Each subsequent message grew more demanding and accusatory. By the 20th voicemail, my mother was practically shouting, "You deliberately hid who the Larsons really are. Do you know how this makes us look? Everyone can see that you married into money and didn't even have the decency to tell your own parents. We'd never have left if we'd known." I felt sick to my stomach. Of course, now that they had seen the Larson family's wealth displayed in my wedding photos, my parents suddenly regretted their actions, not because they were wrong, but because they had miscalculated what they could gain from the connection. They think I married David for his family's money, I said to David, who had been listening with growing anger beside me, and they're mad because they missed the opportunity to benefit from it themselves. That's unbelievable, he replied, running a hand through his hair in frustration. After what they did to your dress, after abandoning you on our wedding day, they have the audacity to be angry at you. I scrolled through the text messages, each one more demanding than the last. The final one, sent just hours before our landing, read, "We're coming to your apartment tomorrow at 6. Be there. We need to discuss fixing this situation." Fixing this situation, I repeated incredulously. They think there's a way to fix what they did. That night, I barely slept, anxiety coursing through me at the thought of facing my parents. David suggested we simply refuse to see them, but I knew that would only delay the inevitable confrontation. Better to face it head-on and then move forward with our lives. The next evening, at precisely 6, our doorbell rang. David squeezed my hand one last time before I opened the door to find my parents standing there, looking remarkably unrepentant given the circumstances. Finally, my mother said, pushing past me into the apartment, "We've been trying to reach you for days." My father followed, his eyes sweeping critically over our home. "So, this is where you live." Surprisingly modest, considering. I closed the door, steeling myself. "Considering what, Dad?" "Considering you married into the Larson family," he replied bluntly. "Why did you hide who they really are from us? Did you think we wouldn't find out?" "I didn't hide anything," I said, keeping my voice level with effort. "You never asked, and it wasn't relevant. David doesn't define himself by his family's business, and neither do I. Not relevant." My mother's voice rose in disbelief. "You married into one of the wealthiest families in Denver, and you didn't think that was worth mentioning to your own parents?" David stepped forward. "With all due respect, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, I think you forfeited any right to explanations after your actions on our wedding day." My father's face darkened. "This doesn't concern you, young man. This is between us and our daughter. Actually, it very much concerns me," David replied firmly. "You abandoned my wife on our wedding day and destroyed her wedding dress out of spite. Now you're in our home making accusations because you discovered my family has money that, for the record, has nothing to do with why Sophie and I fell in love." My mother waved her hand dismissively. "We made a mistake. Certainly, we were upset and acted impulsively, but families forgive each other. Now we need to move forward. Make proper introductions to the Larsons. We should host a reception for you both. Invite our friends and family who missed the wedding." The audacity left me speechless for a moment. They weren't here to apologize but to strategize how to benefit from my marriage. "Let me make sure I understand," I said slowly. "You left me on my wedding day with a vicious note and my destroyed dress. You said nothing for weeks. Then you saw photos showing the Larsons are wealthy, and suddenly you want to play happy family and host a reception as if nothing happened. Don't be dramatic, Sophie," my father scoffed. "Everyone makes mistakes. We were hurt that you seemed to prefer his family to your own, but now we understand the situation better." "The situation," I repeated. "You mean now that you know David's family has money, you want to be part of our lives again? That's not how this works. You can't treat people horribly and then expect forgiveness when you realize there might be some benefit to you. We're your parents," my mother insisted. "Family is forever. The Larsons need to meet your real family, not just get your version of events." "My version of events." I felt my control slipping. "There is no version. There are facts. You abandoned me. You destroyed my wedding dress. You left a note saying, and I quote, "Let's see how you get married now." Those aren't interpretations. They're things you actually did. We had no idea the Larsons would simply buy you another dress, my father countered. If we'd known who they were, if you'd known they were wealthy, you'd have behaved differently, I finished for him. That just makes it worse, not better. It means your love and support are conditional not just on me meeting your expectations, but on what you can gain from the relationship. My mother's expression hardened. I don't like your tone, Sophie. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me? I interrupted. Years of pent-up hurt finally breaking free. Criticized me, compared me unfavorably to others, made me feel like I was never good enough, abandoned me on my wedding day. Tell me, what should I be grateful for? A heavy silence filled the room. My parents exchanged glances, clearly unprepared for this version of me, one who wouldn't back down or accept their manipulation. We want to meet with the Larsons, my father finally said, changing tactics. Surely that's not too much to ask. We should all get to know each other now that we're connected by marriage. David, who had been quietly supportive beside me, spoke up. My parents are aware of what you did to Sophie. They saw the dress. They saw her heartbreak. I don't think they'd be interested in meeting you under these circumstances. So you've poisoned them against us? My mother accused. Told only your side of the story. There is no side to this story, I said firmly, only the truth. And the truth is that you've shown me exactly who you are and what I mean to you. I won't subject the Larsons, who have shown me nothing but kindness and acceptance, to your brand of toxic family dynamics. My father's face flushed with anger. So this is how it's going to be. You choose them over your own blood. I'm choosing myself, I replied. For perhaps the first time in my life, I'm choosing not to accept treatment that hurts me from anyone, even my parents, especially my parents, who should love me unconditionally but have only ever loved the version of me that serves their needs. Fine, my mother snapped, gathering her purse. When you come to your senses and realize what you're throwing away, don't expect us to welcome you back with open arms. There are consequences for this kind of disrespect, Sophie. I'm well aware of consequences, I said quietly. I've been living with the consequences of your conditional love my entire life. It stops now. As they moved toward the door, my father turned back. This isn't over. Your sister agrees with us, by the way. She thinks you've been utterly selfish throughout this entire situation. It was a final attempt to hurt me, to make me feel isolated, but I knew better. Emily had texted me privately after seeing the wedding photos, apologizing for not standing up to our parents more forcefully and congratulating me on my marriage. Goodbye, Dad, I said, holding the door open. Mom, I hope someday you can reflect on your actions and understand why this is happening. Until then, I need space from this relationship. After they left, I collapsed onto the couch, emotionally drained but also strangely peaceful. David sat beside me, pulling me into his embrace. I'm so proud of you, he whispered against my hair. That couldn't have been easy. It was actually easier than I expected, I admitted. Once I stopped seeking their approval and started standing up for what I deserve, the words just came. Over the next few weeks, the story of my parents' actions somehow leaked into our extended family and social circle, likely through my mother's distorted version of events, but unexpectedly, this backfired on them. Several relatives reached out to express their support for me, some sharing their own stories of my parents' manipulative behavior over the years. Most surprisingly, Emily called me one evening, her voice thick with emotion. I saw the burned dress. Sophie, Mom kept it. Can you believe that? Like some kind of trophy? I found it in their closet when I was helping them unpack from Maui. That's when I knew everything they told me about what happened was a lie. Her support meant more than she could know. For years, our parents had used her as a wedge between us, playing favorites to keep us from forming a united front. Now, seeing the truth for herself, she was finally breaking free from their manipulation as well. As summer turned to fall, my parents made several more attempts to contact us, each time with a different approach, sometimes angry and demanding, other times wounded and pleading. Occasionally, they would attempt to use other family members as intermediaries, but David and I remained firm in our boundaries, insisting that any relationship moving forward would need to begin with a genuine acknowledgement of their actions and a commitment to change. That acknowledgement never came. The months following our confrontation with my parents were a time of profound healing and growth. With David's support and regular sessions with Dr. Kim, I began to process the deep wounds of my childhood and the fresh trauma of the wedding day betrayal. What your parents did was a form of emotional abuse, Dr. Kim explained during one session. The burned dress was a symbolic act of violence against your independence and happiness. It's natural to feel grief not just for what happened, but for the parents you deserved but never had. That framing helped me understand the complex emotions I was experiencing. Sadness and anger tangled with unexpected relief. For the first time in my life, I was free from the constant pressure to earn my parents' approval, a battle I now recognized was designed for me to lose. Our first holiday season as a married couple brought new challenges. Thanksgiving at the Larsons' home was warm and joyful, but I couldn't help feeling the absence of my own family, imperfect as they were. Christmas brought a card from my parents containing no apology but a terse note suggesting we put the past behind us for the holidays. I returned it unopened. Family estrangement is more common than people realize, Elizabeth told me gently when she noticed my melancholy mood during their Christmas gathering. Michael didn't speak to his father for the last 15 years of the man's life. It was painful but necessary for his own well-being. Sometimes the healthiest thing we can do is create distance from those who hurt us. Even when they're family, perhaps, especially then. Her understanding was a balm to my spirit. The Larsons never pressed me to reconcile with my parents for the sake of appearances or tradition. They respected my decision and continued to welcome me fully into their family without making me feel like I owed them anything in return. In January, I received an unexpected email from my sister. Emily had moved out of our parents' home and taken an apartment with a friend, her first real step toward independence at 22. They've been unbearable since everything happened, she wrote. Dad lost a promotion at work and blames it on the distraction of your wedding drama. Mom keeps telling everyone who'll listen that you married David for his money and turned him against the family. I finally told them they were being ridiculous and that they created this situation themselves. They didn't speak to me for 3 days. I think I'm beginning to understand what you've been dealing with all these years. We began meeting for coffee every few weeks, rebuilding our relationship without our parents' interference. It was healing to connect with the one person who truly understood the dynamics of our upbringing, even if she had experienced it differently as the favored child. Spring brought a new development that tested my emotional resilience in unexpected ways. I missed my period, and a home test confirmed what I had begun to suspect. I was pregnant. The joy David and I felt was complicated by a new wave of anxiety. Would I know how to be a good parent without a positive example to follow? Would my own childhood wounds affect my ability to nurture a child? And buried beneath those concerns, a question I was almost afraid to acknowledge even to myself. Should my parents be allowed to know their grandchild? Having a child doesn't obligate you to reconnect with your parents, Dr. Kim assured me when I voiced these concerns. Many people worry they'll repeat the patterns of their own upbringing, but awareness is the first step to breaking those cycles. You recognize what was harmful in your parents' approach, which means you can consciously choose a different path. As my pregnancy progressed, Elizabeth became an unexpected source of wisdom and support. Unlike my own mother, who had always been critical and withholding, she shared her experiences openly, including her mistakes and uncertainties. No parent is perfect, Sophie, she told me one afternoon as we prepared the nursery in our new house. A spacious 3-bedroom in Cherry Creek that David and I had purchased with his family's help. The difference is whether you can admit your mistakes and repair the relationship when you fall short. Your parents never learned that skill, but you have. In my 7th month, I wrote a letter to my unborn daughter, pouring out my promises and hopes for her future. I would love her unconditionally. I would respect her as an individual. I would support her dreams, even when they differed from my expectations. I would never use my love as a weapon or a bargaining chip. I sealed the letter to give to her someday, a contract with myself as much as a message to her. 2 weeks before my due date, an envelope arrived with my parents' return address. Inside was a card congratulating us on the baby, information they had presumably learned through family channels. There was no apology for the past, only a statement that they expected to be involved in their grandchild's life. After careful consideration and many discussions with David, I wrote back a brief but firm response. I'm not willing to expose my child to the same conditional love and manipulation I experienced growing up. When you're ready to take responsibility for your actions and commit to respectful boundaries, we can discuss supervised visits. Until then, this door remains closed. It was one of the hardest letters I'd ever written, but also one of the most necessary. Becoming a parent had strengthened my resolve to break the cycle of toxic family dynamics, even if that meant maintaining distance from my own parents. Lily Elizabeth Larson was born on a brilliant October morning. Healthy and perfect with David's green eyes and my stubborn chin. Holding her in my arms, I felt a love so pure and unconditional it brought tears to my eyes. This was what family should feel like, not an endless quest for approval, but a safe harbor of acceptance and support. The journey from the burned wedding dress to this moment had been painful but transformative. I had lost the family I was born into but gained a family of choice that showed me what love without strings attached truly meant. I had found my voice and my boundaries. I had learned that sometimes the healthiest response to toxic relationships is to walk away, even when cultural expectations pressure us to maintain ties at all costs. Most importantly, I had discovered that family is not defined by blood but by how we treat each other, by the safety and acceptance we create together. The Larson family had welcomed me without reservation, but the true gift was finding the strength to demand better treatment and the courage to walk away when it wasn't given. As I watch my daughter grow, I'm grateful for the painful lessons that brought me to this place of peace. The legacy I pass to her will not be one of criticism and conditional love, but of self-respect and the courage to choose relationships that honor her worth. If you've ever had to distance yourself from toxic family members, know that you're not alone. Your worth isn't determined by those who can't see it. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves is to walk away from those who can't love us as we deserve to be loved. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support this channel. Share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members? What helped you through that difficult process? Your stories matter, and they might just help someone else feel less alone in their own journey.